Celebrities backing Democrats over Republicans is nothing new in the world of politics. This election season gave us the clearest example of this, perhaps ever. With the change to the Democratic ticket, Vice President Harris officially got the go-ahead from none other than the Queen herself, Beyonce, to use the song Freedom from her 2016 album Lemonade during the campaign season. Back in January of 2021, a few days before Joe Biden's inauguration, his campaign held a We the People concert that included will.i.am, Ben Harper, Fall Out Boy, and Cher, just to name a few. Barack Obama had the Queen of Soul herself, Aretha Franklin, performing at his inauguration in 2009. So there's a pattern here, right? But the way musicians are rejecting Donald Trump is like deeper than any diss track I have ever heard. This is a long list of musicians who have told Donald Trump to stop playing their music. And it includes some of the biggest names: Rihanna, R.E.M., Adele, Queen, Elton John, plus the families of artists we have lost, like Prince and Tom Petty. The list keeps growing. After Trump used a music video of her song, My Heart Will Go On, at his Montana rally on Saturday, Celine Dion denounced it on social media, saying, "In no way is this use authorized, and Celine Dion does not endorse this or any similar use." She also pointed out it was quite a choice to use a song tied to the most famous sunken ship in history to talk about your campaign, adding, "And really? That song?" This week, the family of soul legend Isaac Hayes threatened to sue Trump for using the soul classic Hold On, I'm Coming, which Isaac Hayes wrote. The list of artists loudly backing Trump is, on the other hand, much shorter and includes artists like Ted Nugent and Kid Rock. But the ones who are more low-key about it seem to keep Trump at arm's length. After the assassination attempt against Trump last month, 50 Cent invoked him at a Boston concert. And immediately after, TMZ reported, reports surfaced declaring 50 would be on stage in Milwaukee to play a gig during the Republican convention. But that was news to his camp, and they quickly denied it. Joining us now to discuss is the host of The ReidOut here on MSNBC, my friend Joy Reid. Joy, thank you so much for joining us this evening on The Last Word. I'm going to start with this because this is fascinating to me. We have artists who want to sort of associate themselves with Donald Trump, but they don't really want him to play their songs. 50 talks about him. Waka Flocka Flame talks about him. Sexy Red talks about him. What is it, Joy, that you think is going on that you have entertainers who want to be near him, but they don't really want their brand completely associated with him?
Right. Well, I mean, I think that even people who, for whatever reason, and I couldn't explain to you why some of these artists want to be associated with Donald, or, like him at all, or want to reference him or sort of promote him to their fans. But note that they also are conscious of the fact that he is an anathema to the culture and to the people who buy their records, right? They may be MAGA because they want tax cuts or for whatever reason, but I think they're reading properly, and maybe their publicists are on their behalf reading properly where Donald Trump stands culturally in this country. He stands at the fringes. He stands with people like Kid Rock, who is so far out of date. He's a fringe part of the culture from like the early 90s. So Donald Trump just does not have a place in the popular culture as much as he would love to.
I want to play you some sound from one of the most famous instances of a Republican trying to latch on to popular music. This is from Reagan. And get your response on the other side.
America's future rests in 1,000 dreams inside your hearts. It rests in the message of hope in songs of a man so many young Americans admire, New Jersey's own Bruce Springsteen. And helping you make those dreams come true is what this job of mine is all about.
In that case, I think what's also telling is Bruce Springsteen was speaking about a culture of people who have been left behind. Reagan claimed they'd be speaking for a culture of people that was left behind, and yet he still didn't want it. Why do you think that was the case even back then?
Well, I mean, Bruce Springsteen is very much a Democrat, right? And he is, literally campaigned for Democratic candidates. When I was doing politics, he was very much present, around the Obama campaign. So I think his personal politics have always been about the little guy. And he's understood Republicans and Ronald Reagan in particular, remember trickle-down economics, to be really in favor of the super rich. But look, the reality is the presidency, I've said this before, I'll say it again, the presidency is in many ways an avatar for the American people. It's sort of who we are projecting ourselves to the world as who we want to be, how we want to be seen. And so it's not surprising that presidents want to associate themselves with the popular culture, especially in the modern era. But remember, James Brown liked Ronald Reagan. You've had presidents court Elvis Presley. They want to wrap their arms around the culture because they are, in many ways, an ambassador to the world for what America is. The problem for Donald Trump is that there are a lot of people who are looking at what he is and what he represents and saying, I don't want that not only associated with me, with my family, with my children. Right. I don't want to explain that to a kid. But I don't want that to be my avatar. When I interviewed Isaac Hayes III, he was very clear. This is not just about unfair use and having to compensate him for using his father's song. What bothered him is the way that Donald Trump represents himself in the world, the hatefulness, the cruelty, the meanness, the name calling. He doesn't want that associated with Isaac Hayes. He doesn't want that associated with the legacy of a great musician. And so Donald Trump's problem is that he has created a brand that is so hateful and angry at the culture. What Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are angry about is the multicultural ecumenism of what they call the left, but that just means the culture. It's a culture in which people of different races, people of different gender identities, all kind of are an amalgam and are all part of the culture of cool. And they hate that culture. So they can't turn around and say, I want Adele's music. She's like, no. The Beatles folks are like, no. Bruce Springsteen, no. Celine Dion, no. Even Eddie Grant, Earth, Wind and Fire, Everlast. You go through it. Guns N' Roses said no. Nickelback said no. Leonard Cohen said no. Linkin Park. Why they would think they could play these people's music at a concert that's celebrating going back to the 1950s literally makes no sense. Or not at a concert, at a rally. At an events that are celebrating going backwards to before these artists literally were considered even acceptable to a lot of parents.
And it's amazing to me. I'm old enough to remember when, like, Brian McKnight, performed at a Republican convention and he survived, but people don't even want to be associated with that now. I want to read you also this quote. This is really fascinating. It's from The Hill, and they reported in June about Donald Trump meeting with House Republicans. And one of the things he said is that Trump was surprised. He was surprised that Taylor Swift didn't want to come out and endorse him because in his mind, he had passed policies that were going to be helpful. What does it say about the bubble that Trump world and Republicans are in that they would even think that? Because I think it's one part to realize that you're not cool enough to get into the building, but it's something else to not realize how despised you are by the people who are dancing inside the club.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a part of the Republican Party and the conservative movement that is like the angry person that can't sit at the cool table. And so they hate everyone at the cool table because they're not sitting there. I think, but, there's something a little bit sad about it, right? I mean, the fact that Donald Trump would have to get rejected by Prince and Queen, two artists who there's nothing about the MAGA movement that would even be welcoming to the individuals who are Prince and the members of Queen. But the fact that they so desperately want to be at that cool table, that they want that culture of cool connection, and they want to be in the door and inside of the club, it does say something about why they hate American culture so much and why they're so against it, because they know that their old-fashioned 1950s send the women back to the kitchen values just don't fit in with that culture.
They desperately want to be in the club, but 50 won't let them use that song. Joy Reid, thank you so much for joining us tonight on The Last Word.
Thank you. Thank you, my friend.